This is the most authentic wilderness survival I've ever seen. They used charcoal to burn a 500-pound strip of wood, turn it into a canoe, and parade it through water full of crocodiles. To survive the winter, they braved the rain to build shelters. The goal is to get a good night's sleep. Come here 50 days. They have completely adapted to life here, made all kinds of primitive tools of life. The time came to day 42. After Gary withdrew due to illness, Max started to lose his mind. They lived together for more than a month, killed 2 crocodiles. There is no emotion, there is chicken. Now they hope to finish the canoe as soon as possible. You can explore new continents. Jeff, team this way. He and Steven were out collecting wood early in the morning. They named their team the Bayou Boys. They're full of chicken when they're working, always yelling. This morning, it's out there screaming. Matt heard it before he even got up. He hated the loudspeakers very much. Jeff and Steven always talk loudly when they are working. You can scream anytime, anywhere. Matt's not happy when they're happy. Matt's team woke up to them. I got up and went fishing in the trees. They haven't caught a nutria all week. Matt thinks Jeff's yelling scared off the nutria. Now they have to fish for protein. Matt and Ryan are standing in the trees fishing. He soon caught a big fish. Riley ran out, too, hoping to get some fishing credit on this hunt. Matt pulls the fish back. Too bad Ryan didn't catch it. The fish oil flew out. In this case, they must have dumped the pot on this tree. When Jeff saw it, instantly happy. Ow! Snyder teamed this way. They still had crocodile roast for breakfast. After Gary left, they have more food. Now they have nothing to eat and drink. Max really misses when Gary was around. At the very least, it brings us joy. Now their main plan is to finish the canoe. Constantly put charcoal on the wood to burn, and smear mud around the edges to protect them. A 500-pound piece of wood. It burns about 70% of its weight. To achieve the desired buoyancy, burn one of these canoes. It'll take at least 3 days. The weather has been very bad recently. Rainy days can affect the completion of the raft, although they still have plenty of crocodile meat. But they wanted to finish the canoe quickly, so we can explore the resources on the other side. Jeff, team this way. They're having the worst time of all, although there is fish to eat. But the shelter is so rudimentary. It's very cold to sleep at night. They would rather light a fire to keep warm. They don't want a perfect shelters for the wind. The weather is getting colder. Matt's team sat in the shelter nostalgic for the barbecue days before. The rain was falling harder and harder in the sky. Snyder and his men took shelter from the rain. There's a window of wisdom at the top of the shelter. Jeff's team is finally completing the shelter. They collected many palm leaves to cover the roof. There are enough trees to make a wooden shelter. Maybe 20 days left. They don't bother with all this. Fortunately, there are plenty of palm trees nearby. They can use these leaves to keep out the rain. Shelters don't keep you warm, but keep out the rain. It'll help you sleep better at night. Team Matt's in the shelter analyzing Team Jeff's shelter. The winter winds were blowing against their shelter. They think Jeff's team should find a dry spot, build a closed shelter. Maybe the cause of eating too much. Jeff's team became the topic of conversation. In the blink of an eye, Jeff, I can't believe they've perfected the shelter so well. They also build a wooden frame to put in front of the shelter. Insert palm leaves into the wooden frame. This will not only keep out the rain but also the wind. Although it is raining heavily now, they still worked in the heavy rain because they know to get wet once, and getting wet every time. I have to say that their physique is really good, working naked in the winter rain. Matt and their shelter is very dry. Apparently the shelter is very waterproof. They're in the shelter looking out. Though the sky thundered and thundered, Jeff is still cutting trees without fear. Aren't you really afraid of being struck by lightning? They collected a lot of wood to burn tonight. The heavy rain continued into the evening. Jeff rested with his back against the fire. It's pouring outside. They couldn't sleep at all, and Matt and the others are sleeping soundly. In this bad weather, the one that tests the shelter the most. Having a good shelter can help you win championships. The rain showed no sign of stopping. Jeff and Steven curl up to rest. Time came to day 43. It rained all night last night. Jeff, they were starved and cold all night. It's been through a lot of trials. The relationship between Jeff and Steven has also grown stronger. Snyder teamed this way. Wake up and eat breakfast. Snyder went to check the fishing traps. He came to the shore to finish. It's just that the mud here has sunk so deep. Snyder still has stitches in his balls. Don't touch the water. He has to be very careful about the mud. It would be a shame to withdraw at this time. Since Gary quit, they'll never catch any more fish. Although there is still some crocodile meat to eat. But the lack of fish every day makes them nervous. After Max lost Gary as a teammate, I can't be happy. Gary went home, not dead. Will you cheer up, please? Max is at the shelter eating barbecue and thinking about Gary. Jeff, team this way. They're still perfecting the shelter today. Working in the rain on a cold day. Aren't you afraid of catching a cold? I'd grab a spicy strip of soup. Their shelter is being perfected little by little. Matt and the boys are fishing with crayfish. Catfish also have mouths. He's also afraid of crayfish poking his mouth. Put the crawfish to the test. It serves you right that you can't catch any fish. Jeff, their shelter is almost complete. Wood is an important item for perfect heating. They need to collect wood every day. Matt's got a fish bite on his side. Successfully caught a big fish. This fish is very big. It's the first time I've ever seen them catch a freshwater fish this big. This fish should weigh about 10 catties, enough to feed them 3 meals a day. What kind of fish is this? You can swallow a crayfish that big in one bite. When they were handling the fish, found a lot of fat and fish roe. There's enough guts for them to eat. The weather is getting better. Snyder's making canoes again. The wood was wet. The wood on top is like mud. Snyder continued to cut grooves in the wood. It's a physical job. 2 people take turns dealing crit damage to the tree for hours. Doesn't seem to be making much progress. Snyder lay on his stomach and lit a fire to get the charcoal. Is this position necessary? When Max saw it, can't bear it anymore. He decided to go back to the shelter first, take a break first. Snyder thought Max was in a bad mood. I've been depressed since I lost Gary, so you need to let off some steam. The photographer was too shy to approach outside the shelter. When Snyder returned to the shelter, I saw Max sleeping under his fur. Probably spent too much time in the wild. Max finds it very boring here. Snyder wants to build a canoe and explore across the river, and Max wanted to lie down until the end. Snyder had to decide to line the nut bags. The doctor came to examine it. Max, who wanted out of the challenge, braved to see Snyder out of nuts, so he decided to stay with Snyder until the end. Matt grouped this way. They began to enjoy the roe. This big fish we caught today, enough to feed them 3 times a day, hungry for so many days. They enjoyed the grilled fish dinner today. Jeff and his friends are not so good. They have been working in the rain for 2 days. Team Matt sat in the shelter eating barbecue, talking about their neighbors. Ever since Jeff and his crew got here, I've been working. The good news is that they are moving very fast. This shelter should last them until day 60. Fur in the shelter is hung up to dry. Matt's team, they ate half the fish in 1 meal today. It's nice to have food in this cold weather, but the days ahead are long. They have to distribute the food so you can live longer. Matt guessed the next winter. Today's fish could be our last meal. Finish this fish. They could be starving for a dozen days by the end of it. Fish heads are used to stew soup. They don't want to waste any of it. The other half of the fish they chose not to eat. Seeing the 2 guys next door trying so hard, and they gave us the hook. So they decided to give the fish back to Jeff and them. They came to Jeff's shelter. Give the grilled fish to Jeff and his crew. I hate it when they yell, and jealous of the catfish they caught, but in the nick of time, they still choose to be individuals. I said it before. Suddenly we have a neighbor. It's not nice to have to share dumplings every New Year. This fish is also very rare. But seeing Jeff's team look so pathetic, worked in the rain for 2 days. If we don't eat, we could be doing something big for them. Steven is also very grateful for their grilled fish. He also grew to love his neighbor. The shelter for Jeff's team is already done. The shelter has been set up. There's still meat to eat. It was a great day. They made the leftover meat into smoked meat. After completing the shelter, Jeff felt better, too. I think we're gonna get a good night's sleep. Time came to day 44. Snyder sighed. He was out hunting this morning. It rained for a few days and was very wet. Snyder wants to wash the nut bag. Too bad it's still stitched up. He found many squirrel footprints on the ground, but there was no sign of a squirrel. He decided to guard the squirrel here. Soon a scapegoat appears. When Snyder saw it, approached slowly with the bow and arrow. 2 shots in a row, but none of them hit the squirrel. It's really a shame. Max couldn't stop thinking about Gary, slouching over everything. He has to pull himself together. To survive the day 60, we have to find a way to get food. He came to the shore to check the fishing gear. Luckily, he caught a fish. This fish is small in size, but it must be good to have something to eat. These proteins will support them for a few more days. Snyder continues to insist on other fishing devices, equally rewarding. A fish was struggling in the water, but Snyder can't touch the water. Max came over, too. This opportunity to perform is definitely for Max. He went in and pulled the catfish out. These 2 fish today give them some hope. The mood also changed for the better. 2 catfish were harvested today, can satisfy them with a full meal. Max took the fish and washed it in the sewage. The more Snyder thought about it, the worse it got. He felt like Max was disrespecting him. Snyder approached Max to theorize. Just after Snyder caught the fish, Max came over, but he went straight down to catch the fish without asking Snyder. Snyder thinks Max is looking down on him, thought it was disrespectful to rob the fish. Max immediately said sorry to him. This scene just took me by surprise. It's like me walking an old granny down the street. Grandma said I didn't respect her. It's even worse. Fortunately, Max didn't care so much about him. It seems like a small thing. It's actually very damaging to self-esteem. They grilled the fish directly on the fire. Bite down to the crunch of beef. Water lilies as a green salad. The fish is very crispy. Snyder thinks we've exhausted all our resources here. Maybe they'll consider moving too. Time came to day 45. Jeff, team this way. Jeff got up early in the morning to check the fishing line, but Ben didn't get anything. I had some fish yesterday, but they have to keep trying to get food. Steven explored the swamp. There are a lot of fallen trees here. He wanted to hunt for something to eat here. Here he found a spicy strip, but he's hiding in secret. Steven went straight for the knife. Lechiao went straight to the west to learn lessons. Such a little spicy strip. A cup of rice in the porridge is barely enough to eat. You can't just drop a severed head, put it in your pants, and take it back for trash sorting. Steven returns to the shelter with the Lechiao. Not much meat, though, but it's perfect for bait. They can use the meat to catch more meat. Steven cuts the spicy strips into small pieces. Fishing on a hook. Snyder team this way. Today they plan to continue perfecting the canoe. They intend to leave here as soon as possible, though the wind blows today. But the weather is still good. The canoe was almost burned, but it's not deep enough. They went on burning the fire. Just build the canoe. They have a chance to get out of here. To prevent the canoe from being unstable in the water, they made a stabilizer. Even if it turns over, it won't affect navigation. Building a raft is a very big project. They must finish the canoe as soon as possible. Time came to day 46. The weather is getting colder. Matt realized he had to start collecting wood. He and Riley are collecting wood, and Ryan was fishing in the tree. The cold weather is very difficult for them. Cold weather will hasten their hunger. The fish was not caught. The northwest wind has had its fill. Jeff teamed this way. When Steven pulled the string, found the fishing line stuck in the debris. I really don't like it when it's so cold. Fortunately, I caught a fish. The fish was frozen stiff. Steven was cold out of his skin. Every time I go fishing, I don't eat fish heads. Going crocodile fishing in this cold. He's processing catfish on the shore. My fingers are so frozen I can't feel any movement. Be unable to understand. Don't let Gary see this mess. The temperature feels like winter right now. Matt spread hay on the roof of the shelter. Just make sure the shelter is tight. The fire inside keeps the heat better. Matt and Riley cooperated inside and outside the shelter. Look for holes that need to be filled. This is indeed a good idea. After more than a month of starvation, they don't have much fat left to resist freezing. Jeff teamed this way. They collected a lot of wood. Their shelter is barely livable, but the temperature of the fire is too low. It's in broad daylight. Are you two sleeping back in the shelter? Look at Jeff's breath. It should be around 10 degrees. The fire wasn't really big. It's not going to warm the whole body. Their shelter was constantly smoking. I thought they were making dumplings for Chinese New Year. Matt thinks it's going to be the coldest night so far. They slept like this around the fire at night. On a dark and windy night, all the runners were shivering in the shelter. Snyder and they each lit a fire to keep warm. He also has the most fur of any player. The night was a little more comfortable than the other teams. It gets colder and colder in the middle of the night. They couldn't sleep in the shelter. Everyone watched the fire until dawn. And the dawn doesn't end well, does it? The plants outside have begun to frost. Only colder weather awaits them. The fire in the shelter never stopped. Steven looks through the cracks. The fog enveloped a hellish scene. Actually, what I fear more than hell is your breath that you haven't brushed your teeth in a month. Hey, 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 hey. My fans are dignitaries. I can't bear to see you stink like shit. Matt woke up this morning with his feet frozen. Sleep with your back exposed at night. I feel like one side of my body is frozen like a dog. Keep your feet on the fire. Matt and Ryan came outside the shelter early in the morning to observe. He's got legs. I told you 10,000 times not to breathe on the camera. I really fell for these high guys. A hole in the fur on Ryan's ass. What does this mean? There was smoke on the river. You can imagine how cold it is. Everyone woke up feeling very cold. Snyder was maintaining the fire. Without fire, they may not survive the night. The doctor came back today to disinfect Snyder. Seems to be recovering well. There are 9 stitches left to be laid out. Every time Max sees Snyder's bag of nuts, the expression is very embarrassing. You can only imagine how bad this is. This time, I finally let all the strings go. Snyder became like a castrated rooster. He keeps shouting that he's an unleashed beast. In fact, it has already stopped rising. The time came to the 48th day. There was a frost every morning. Winter has officially arrived. The water level is also lower. It will become increasingly difficult for them to get food in the water. We have to look for more opportunities on land. We are now 2 weeks away from the end of the challenge. Matt's team is working on their next survival plan. Snyder team this way. They spent time in the canoe every day. Half the process is now complete. It still needs to be burned with charcoal. Mud is used around the edges to protect the structural integrity. They lit a fire on the wood, then put a piece of wood on it to dry. These are the balance poles used to make canoes. It looks like it's almost done. Look forward to getting it ready and sailing soon. They return to the shelter to rest and warm themselves. I think we can get the canoe done backstage. They decided to go to a new place to survive. It was a no-brainer to meet up with Matt and Jeff. Max came to check on the canoe firing. I didn't think the fire was too big. Had to risk putting out these fires. Burning the canoe is a small matter. Directors go to jail if they start a forest fire. They carefully controlled the direction of the charcoal burning. I think it'll be ready by tomorrow. Time came to day 49. Matt grouped this way. Ryan was out hunting early in the morning. It's warm today. He hopes to hunt a nutria. They're in desperate need of barbecue to fuel their bodies. It's easier to get hungry when it's cold. Matt and Riley are going hunting in the woods. You can catch any prey and eat it in a crock pot. There are swamps everywhere. Ryan won't even walk on the ground. While he was exploring the neighborhood, spotted a squirrel nearby. Aiming a spear at a squirrel is one shot. The little squirrel was scared and ran home to find his mother. Riley and Matt are on the hunt, too. They also spotted squirrels. Squirrel meat is small but abundant. Matt's aim was an arrow. Successfully caught a squirrel. This arrow is really accurate. The hunt finally paid off. This squirrel had shot. Matt took the opportunity to brag about himself. They returned to the shelter with a squirrel. Is there enough for one squirrel? Snyder teamed this way. They decided to leave here tomorrow. Snyder already hates that kind of thing. Trying to find a new place to live. They're recycling all the paracord. Getting ready to leave tomorrow. Snyder made a paddle out of wood. It's a manual job. Their raft was always fired. Dig the charcoal ash out of it. It's beautiful when it's done up. They used to hang the charcoal off it. Make the canoe as fine as possible. I made exactly 2 spots. I just don't know if it'll float. In order to be more stable during the voyage, add a balancing device to the canoe. Matt grouped this way. They're enjoying a squirrel roast. This squirrel is their food for the day. It's not very big, though. Such cold weather. It's good enough to have something to eat. Time came to the 50th day. The Snyder group plans to go looking for new areas to generate today. Well, it's just a show crew meeting up. Early in the morning, Snyder was praying for a smooth move. This is obviously a play for yourself. I know the show set it up. After praying, they set out. Decorate the canoe briefly. I'm gonna be a brave voyager. Write crocodile on it. I'm sure this canoe crocodile would have nightmares. They checked the map before setting out. They planned to follow the river all the way up. I don't know why I chose this route, but I know. It's going to end up with Jeff Matt in them. They pushed the canoe into the water with great effort. It's a lot heavier than they thought. After they put the canoe in the water, it can float 2 people, but there are too many water lilies around. It's very hard to slide. They sat in the canoe and kept sliding. The hull is very close to the water. You could easily get water. It was hard to get to normal waters. They will embark on a long voyage. Jeff, check the hooks over here. I haven't caught any fish in days. He hoped very much that he would be lucky to catch one this time. He pulled the fishing line in the water, but no fish were caught. Without any fish, they continued to gather firewood. Today is the 50th day. They need to continue generating for another 10 days to complete the challenge. It's a very complicated place to live. It's a good thing they've survived this far. Jeff and they came to Matt's team. Let's talk about how to deal with this winter. The resources here have been depleted by them. The water level has dropped and fishing is difficult. They also intend to travel to other places to survive. Jeff offered to combine numbers and resources. Spend the next 10 days together. Matt's team did the same, although it will be merged with too loud public. But to survive, let's make a little noise. They decided to officially become a team. Go to new location to continue building. The purpose is obvious. It was a no-brainer to end up with the Snyder group. They're going all the way north too, and Snyder's side. They sailed through the water for hours. There are a lot of trees in this location. They want to explore it here. As soon as Snyder landed, he noticed deer footprints on the ground and lots of snail shells. They've mentioned deer many times. Presumably this merger must have been hunting a deer. They chose a strong piece of wood here. Snyder plans to set up a shelter here. It's a natural shelter. All you have to do is put a stick on it. It's a lot more than that. Max is in charge of building the shelter. Snyder was in charge of the fire. You have fire, you have everything. They tried to set up the shelter before dark, and so they rested at night under the trees. They have a lot of fur. It's not cold at night. Max clearly felt the temperature drop. Time came to day 51. This morning, they collect everything. Prepare to start moving on foot. Ryan put together a lot of tools. This is a beard comb, bows and arrows and fishing tools. Jeff, when they woke up, I started packing up too. Not much stuff though, but it's all they have. They all stood in the doorway packing up their gear, just wearing fur and carrying some primitive tools. Jeff and Steven come over, too. When everything was ready, we set out. This hike will take at least 10 kilometers, but it's nothing to them, you know, as strong as an ox. Snyder wakes up early to collect wood. The neighborhood is a whole new place for them. There are plenty of resources for them to consume. Today, they continue to improve the shelter. Aren't you here to hunt? Would it be fun to collect wood in a different place? Maybe building shelter is harder than hunting. Jeff, they were walking in the jungle. I'm sure they'll all be together soon. So what's in store for them next? Look forward to an update in the next video.